Jonny Miller opens the conversation by framing the nervous system as a fundamental lens through which we perceive and experience the world. He emphasizes that our nervous system's state profoundly shapes how we interpret external stimuli, coloring our reality based on whether we are calm, reactive, or dysregulated. This perspective challenges the common assumption that the world is experienced objectively. Instead, Miller suggests that our internal nervous system state filters and modulates every interaction and perception. He further explains that when the nervous system is in a reactive mode, it narrows our experience, often leading to heightened sensitivity to perceived threats and a diminished capacity for connection and calm. This reactivity can manifest in various ways, including emotional outbursts, fatigue, or withdrawal, all of which distort our experience of life. Miller's view invites listeners to consider their nervous system's health as central to their overall well-being and worldview. Throughout the discussion, Miller identifies several key signs that indicate when the nervous system is out of whack. These include heightened reactivity, such as knee-jerk anger, chronic fatigue, sleep disturbances, and difficulties in relationships. He notes that these symptoms often serve as early warning signs, akin to a feather tickling the nervous system, signaling the need for rest or recalibration before more severe consequences arise. Miller uses a vivid metaphor, comparing nervous system dysregulation to a progression from a feather to a brick and eventually a dump truck, illustrating how ignored signals can escalate into crises such as burnout, health breakdowns, or intense personal upheavals. He stresses that these symptoms are the body's way of communicating distress and should not be dismissed, as they offer crucial feedback about our internal state. A significant portion of the conversation is devoted to unpacking anxiety, which Miller describes as a constriction in the body rather than a standalone emotion. He traces the etymology of anxiety to the Latin word ango, meaning to constrict, highlighting how anxiety physically manifests as tension and defensive contraction within the nervous system. Miller challenges the common misconception that anxiety is an emotion in itself, reframing it instead as a reaction or defensive strategy to underlying emotions such as fear, anger, or sadness. He explains that anxiety and excitement share the same physiological tension, differing only in how we cognitively frame the experience. This insight encourages a more embodied approach to anxiety, focusing on noticing and releasing bodily constriction rather than merely managing symptoms cognitively. Miller introduces the concept of interoception, the ability to sense internal bodily states, as a foundational skill for nervous system mastery. He explains that many people are disconnected from their bodies, living predominantly in their heads and unaware of the subtle signals their nervous system sends. This disconnection contributes to chronic stress and reactivity because individuals cannot accurately interpret or respond to their internal cues. He advocates for cultivating interoceptive awareness through simple practices that expand one's internal sensory palette, such as tuning into posture, breath, and emotional sensations. Miller likens this process to a chef developing a refined palate, emphasizing that increasing sensitivity to bodily feedback enables better self-regulation and intentional living. This skill is the first step toward recognizing when the nervous system is triggered and requires attention. The conversation delves into the dual pathways of nervous system regulation, top-down and bottom-up. Top-down methods involve cognitive strategies such as mindfulness, reframing, and positive affirmations, which work from the brain downward to influence the body. Miller acknowledges their value, especially for gaining initial insight and shifting perspectives. However, he places particular emphasis on bottom-up approaches, which engage the body directly through breathwork, movement, and physiological interventions to shift nervous system states. Miller highlights the predominance of afferent neurons, body-to-brain signals, over efferent ones, suggesting that bodily sensations heavily influence brain states. He argues that bottom-up techniques are often more effective for immediate nervous system calming and long-term resilience, especially when combined with top-down awareness. Miller stresses that true nervous system mastery requires more than just reducing reactivity. It involves cultivating emotional fluidity, the capacity to fully experience and process emotions as they arise. He explains that emotions themselves are transient, typically lasting only 10 to 20 seconds, but problems arise when we resist or constrict against them, causing emotions to become stuck and prolonging distress. He introduces the concept of emotional debt, where unprocessed emotions accumulate, leading to chronic stress and reduced nervous system capacity. Miller uses the example of wild animals, like an impala shaking after escaping a predator, to illustrate how natural systems discharge stress. Humans, by contrast, often suppress or avoid emotional completion, which contributes to nervous system dysregulation and burnout. Learning to welcome and move through emotions is thus essential for healing and resilience. The podcast explores how nervous system states influence interpersonal dynamics, particularly in conflict situations. Miller explains that people tend to respond to perceived slights or comments based on their current nervous system state, which can amplify or distort the meaning of those interactions. He distinguishes between hyperarousal, aggression, anger, and hypoarousal, withdrawal, shutdown, noting that individuals often default to one mode. He emphasizes the importance of recognizing when one is outside their window of tolerance, a state of optimal arousal where productive engagement is possible. When triggered, people may react disproportionately, either by attacking or withdrawing, which escalates conflict. Miller advocates for developing awareness of bodily signals during conflict and using self-regulation techniques to return to a grounded state, enabling healthier communication and connection. Miller highlights the critical role of physical movement and environmental factors in regulating the nervous system. He notes that modern sedentary lifestyles and urban environments often deprive people of natural movement and sensory experiences that support nervous system balance. Movement practices, such as running, yoga, or even peripheral vision exercises, can help release stored tension and promote fluidity in the body. He also discusses how environmental design influences nervous system states, citing studies on ceiling height affecting creativity and analytical thinking. Miller encourages intentional creation of spaces that foster safety and relaxation, such as quiet areas or natural settings, to support nervous system regulation. This holistic view underscores the interplay between body, mind, and environment in shaping well-being. A nuanced theme in the conversation is the self-regulation paradox, where tools intended to calm the nervous system can inadvertently become mechanisms of avoidance. Miller warns that relying solely on cognitive or physiological techniques to suppress discomfort without engaging with underlying emotions can stall healing and perpetuate reactivity. He stresses that self-regulation practices should be viewed as preparatory steps to create safety and presence, enabling one to then fully experience and process emotions. Without this deeper engagement, individuals risk accumulating emotional debt and remaining trapped in cycles of stress. Miller's approach advocates for compassionate curiosity and courage to face difficult feelings rather than bypassing them. Miller shares deeply personal reflections on grief, describing it as a process of allowing parts of one's identity and future vision to be obliterated and transformed. He reframes grief not as a purely painful experience, but as a complex, often beautiful unfolding that deepens capacity for love and aliveness when fully embraced. He critiques the traditional 5 stages of grief as potential ways people resist the process rather than move through it. Miller encourages willingness to be overwhelmed and to lean into grief's intensity, supported by nervous system practices that foster presence and embodiment. His story illustrates how nervous system mastery can provide tools to navigate profound loss with resilience and openness. Throughout the podcast, Miller offers practical guidance for listeners to begin cultivating nervous system awareness and regulation. He recommends simple daily practices such as interoceptive weather reports, brief internal check-ins that build sensitivity to bodily states. He also highlights breathwork techniques like exhale-emphasized breathing, humming, and movement as accessible ways to downshift nervous system arousal. Miller advocates for an experimental mindset, encouraging individuals to try various practices and observe their effects rather than seeking one-size-fits-all solutions. He underscores the importance of integrating top-down, bottom-up, and environmental strategies to create a comprehensive approach. This pragmatic orientation empowers listeners to take incremental steps toward greater nervous system balance.